Hello, my name is Erin RAMOS, and I'm going to be sharing what I did on my project. So the name of my project is Recorded Silences, Unmarried Women and Black Families in 1911 Charlotte. For this work, I used the full data set, and I also used a contribution from one of the previous cohort students, and then I also used the 1910 census, and I believe that's it. I will be making the list here once I have completed this notebook by tomorrow. So the overview of this project is that I wanted to look at the imposed silences on Black families and unmarried women. And we'll go over this later in my book as well, but white women are mentioned in connection to men, i.e. their marital status, but this is not the case with Black women that are in this directory from Charlotte in 1911. So I wanted to see where they lived and see if I could find them. To also use different tools like Tableau to visualize where they are. I also used QGIS. So first we're going to go into data manipulation. So when we started learning about data manipulation and stuff, when we were doing things with that Charlotte 1911 data set, one of the tools that we used was Neo4j, which created these nodes. And I'll just took a screenshot of what I found. So I was looking at marital status as one of the prompts for our assignment. And I noticed that only the white citizens were showing up. So if you see in my diagram, their white nodule has the names of the women and then the men attached to them, while the African American nodule has none. This is something I noticed in other forms that we used as well. So I call this missing or silent data. It was hard to map the African American or Black community because they would have a null value next to their name when I tried to do it. So when I did our work here in Tableau, when we made our story, I asked a couple different questions, and I again noticed the same thing when I looked at marital status. So when I tried to do it with African American or Black citizens in here, I would get lots of null values, and it just wouldn't look very pretty. So I would have to take that out so that I could just be left with the white citizens. And this is what I got. I was looking at job who worked. So I was looking at the women who worked, and there was mostly unmarried women that worked, as you see in this graph, and then married women did work, but not as much. And now this listing or this Tableau was used using our sample data, so not the full data set. So now when I began to look at completing this project, the data set was too large and it was overwhelming. So to combat this, I used some data that one of the students from a previous cohort did, Sarah Craig, and I have linked her Jupyter notebook right there. So to summarize her work, she split the full data set down because it was too big to use in OpenRefine. She created Excel spreadsheets, split them apart as well, and then matched the husbands and wives together. There was assumptions that she had to make to do this, such as that there was probably no interracial marrying, so that if a man was listed as Black, his wife would probably be Black. This isn't a perfect solution, but that's what she did because there's a lot of missing answers. Because she had also she had also realized the disparity between Black women and white women in how they're recorded. This is her Tableau that she made from her data set. So she has at the top, you'll see it broken down by title. So Miss, Mr., Mrs., and then if you go to the bottom, by race. So whereas before I would find no Black people under Miss or Mrs., she has manually went in and added them. So then they come up like this, and this, and this for Miss. And then when she created this data set, it allowed me to see families, because now I knew who was married to who. I didn't have to go through and figure that out. This is just another what I did. This is the one I was looking at it. This is what I found. So this is just in comparison to what she found. Once she created her data set up here, she found she had black and white individuals. This is what I would get. So I would get black individuals as null, nothing listed, and then only the white individuals would have titles of Miss, Mrs., and then widows you see over here. So that was the difference, why I needed her data, so I didn't have to go through all this. I also linked her data sheet right here. It might not work. I might have to figure out another way to link it. Okay. Actually, I'm sorry, this is my data set here. I might have to figure out another way to save it so that it can save correctly. All right, next we go into visualizations. So I used QGIS to visualize this. I thought that it was the best way to see where these women lived, where their addresses were. We had the addresses, but to actually visualize it. So I took her data set, Sarah's data set, and then I had to play around with it. So here's kind of what I ended up with. It was 20,000 entries, and that was way too big for me to do in this short amount of time. So what I did is, first I cut down the sample size. Then I had to manually take out all the white individuals so that I was only left with a collection of black individuals. And then I took out any information that I did not need, which was I did not need to know their job. I did not need to know what type of house they lived in. All the other extraneous things I didn't need to know, so I took them out. I then created a latitude and longitude columns right there, and I started to manually look up their latitude and longitude using the online geolocating tools that we had, but I realized that would take too long because I had cut down until 333 sample or data points, and even that was too much. So instead, I decided there has to be another easier way. I looked into QGIS, and I found that they have a plugin called QGIS, which would allow me to take my Excel file, turn it into a CSV, and then upload it, and it would manually do the plots for me. So I told it, yes, I have address, I have a city, I have a state. I used OpenStreetMap because I couldn't use Google Maps because I don't have an API key, and I didn't want to deal with that. So this is what it looked like. So at the beginning, so you can see it says 0 of 333 found. So I used that to plot the points, and then I got something that looked like this. You see the data points have double names because if there was two people that lived at the same address with the same last name, it would automatically populate it like this. So you can't really tell what's going on here. So I also had to clean this up. So I did that in our next slide. So in this notebook, I played around. I gave them different points. I asked it to sort by title. So I could see Miss, Mr., Mrs. Reverend was one outlier that I wasn't interested in, but it stuck in there. So you see here that right now I have Miss and Mrs. checked. I got rid of the Mr. So now I'm just looking at women, and you'll see that there's two names on one dot, and sometimes it will just say Mrs., but it doesn't mean that there's not a unmarried woman that lives there. It's just that it subsumes the dot. One funny thing that I found was that if I included men in this data set, it would subsume the woman's marker. So it would just show Mr. So that was a funny silence from technology. So this is kind of what I'm talking about here. If I show Mr., there's two men that live there. So it populates two names, but at the same address, there's a woman, Mrs. She's married to one of the men there. So what I did is I decided to take one woman, Laura, and find her. So I had QGIS show me what it looked like in the table. So I can see Laura Alexander, and I can see her husband, which is Thomas. It's abbreviated as TOS, but that becomes Thomas. So I looked up, I wanted to see if I could find her. So I decided to use the 1910 census. So this is a census sheet right here. When I went on the National Archives website, they suggested that you can go to all these other sites or services to get this. And I used Ancestry because I work at a public library. They have a license with Ancestry where if you are in the branch, you can do this. So I used their license and I found this. And if we scroll down, you can see right here, this is her name. This is Laura. It's kind of hard to read here, but this is Laura. This is her husband, Thomas, and their last name, Alexander. And it turns out they had 2 children. And then also they had someone living with them. So this woman right here, down here. I'm sorry, they had 3 children, Thomas, Eugene, and Hattie. This woman down here actually was living with them. It was a white woman. She was a widow, and she lived with them. She was a cook. She was a boarder, so she paid them money to stay there. I just thought this was a really interesting project to turn data points and dots into a family. And they're here, they existed. The fact that a lot of this information is not in the directory is sad, and it just means that if they weren't important enough to record, or they weren't important enough to record this way. So I really enjoyed doing this project, and I wish I had had more time doing it. But this is what I came up with, and I hope someone can use it to find out some other things. Thank you.